Hello, I'm Fred Snell, and I'm pleased to be your host today on this segment of There Is Something About Andover. Today, the subject of our show will be about the organization Andover We Can, which is working on sustainability and climate action in Andover. I'm pleased to have as my guest today, Kate Margulies. Welcome to our show, Kate.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for inviting me.
So, what is Andover We Can?
Andover We Can is a local group of volunteers who focus on educating individuals on climate action. What we can do here in Andover to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to make the town more sustainable.
Wonderful. Well, you had a banner earlier that you showed us about what is Electrify Your Life?
Sure. So Andover We Can has a couple of major programs that we're working on. One of which is Electrify Your Life. And the goal here is to explain to folks why it's important to electrify and how that can not only reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, which is our ultimate goal with climate action, it's also fun to electrify. And so it means thinking about what's in your house that's currently burning fossil fuels and how you can switch those machines over to something that's electric. So a furnace, for instance, most of us have a furnace, especially here in New England, we got to stay warm. Might be heated by natural gas, it might be using natural gas, it might be using some other fuel oil, and you can switch that to a heat pump. And a heat pump is a ridiculous name because it's actually a heating and cooling pump. Both can heat your house in the winter and cool your house in the summer, and it's all electric. Stove, another place, right? We're cooking a lot of people cook on natural gas. We were told gas was the clean burning energy, and it's
not so clean, though, is what they seem to say now in terms of the emissions given off.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, you always have a fire going in your kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Which you don't always want.
And there's not a chimney right there generally.
Correct. Especially if you don't have your fan on. A lot of fans aren't great in our houses today.
Right.
So you can replace a gas burning stove with something called induction, which is, again, electric. It works through magnetism. So everything that's fossil fuel, there is an electric replacement for it. And so you can change your house over to electric.
Okay, isn't that going to be a lot more expensive? I mean, our electric bills are going up fantastically fast, as well as the fossil fuel prices.
Yes. Very, very important question. Very good to think about. As you think about electrifying, for starters, buying the new equipment, the new appliance, there's costs associated with that.
Right.
And so it's not that everyone should go out and just change every appliance in their house over tomorrow. Rather, you kind of walk around your house and you say, hey, how old is this? How old is that? When am I going to have to replace it? So a water heater, might last 10 years. And if your water heater is getting close to 10 years old, you want to be thinking about, hey, what am I going to replace it with? Let's educate myself now on what my options are. And there is a heat pump water heater alternative. So you want to look at the cost for those. Now, as far as buying it up front, there's two great sources of funds right now. One is through the federal government, the Inflation Reduction Act that just passed. There's both upfront rebates for low and moderate income folks, and there's tax credits for people in higher brackets. And right here in Massachusetts, we have the Mass Save program, and there's upfront payments kind of across the board.
That's cash, right? That they send you a check?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, in order to get those, you do have to have Mass Save come out first and do a check of your house. So you don't want to just run and jump and buy it and then try to get your rebate. You have to check with Mass Save first.
Okay.
So that's kind of the upfront cost. The ongoing costs, yes, electricity is expensive. These appliances are more efficient even than the most efficient gas burning appliances. So the cost to run it is going to be currently, under current conditions, right, because prices change,
right,
about comparable. Gas probably is costing you less, however the appliance is that much more efficient. So they come out more or less the same. In addition, it is important to think about what your electric source is. Are you getting clean electricity? Because if we're not getting clean electricity, then this isn't going to reduce your...
Right. Most of the electricity in New England comes from Well, a large piece of it comes from natural gas,
Exactly.
and there's some nuclear and
Yes.
renewable is coming along, but still not a huge
Right.
percentage.
So in Massachusetts, we have regulation that is increasing the percent of renewable every year.
Right.
In addition, there are other sources where you can get your electricity. So you can put solar panels on your house if you happen to have good exposure and good house and good sun. Not everyone does. WeCan is working on something called Andover Community Power. And that is a municipal agreement where we, the town, enters into a contract with an electric supplier. And that allows customers to get a consistent rate. Like right now, the national grid rates, if you have national grid, change every 6 months. So they
Right.
just went up on November 1st.
It went up.
It went up a
Big
lot.
time,
Yeah,
big
like
time.
62%. So when we can get into one of these contracts, you'll have more consistency.
Okay.
And you'll know what the price of your electricity is going to be over time, which is helpful for planning and budgeting. Towns that entered into these agreements 2 and 3 years ago when rates were a lot lower now are paying much lower rates than we are because they were able to lock that in.
Yeah. And we have not got approval from the state yet. I think that was the
Correct. Yep.
holding.
Correct. We
Hold up.
passed Andover Community Power at town meeting
Yes.
a year and a half ago.
Yep.
It went to the state July of 2021, and it's still sitting there. So that's another of our big programs with Andover WeCan is trying to educate people on how they can put pressure on the state to get those municipal plans passed more quickly.
Yep.
So I recommend that you get in touch with Senator Feingold. If he's your senator, if you're here in Andover. And their office is working on ways to move things through the DPU more quickly.
Good, good. That would help.
Yeah.
Well, now, Andover WeCan is also part of what, a Massachusetts organization? Just
Yes.
Speaking of statewide issues.
Exactly. So there's a Massachusetts organization called MCAN, Massachusetts Climate Action Network. And it is composed of a number of groups like ours in towns throughout the Commonwealth. And we all get together so we can share ideas. So if Newton did an amazing sustainability fair, we can talk to them about how that worked, who they invited, and then we were able to create a sustainability fair just at Andover Day this past September. We all get together. In Haverhill, they were trying to create a new Shave the Peak. We talk to other towns and see what kinds of programs are they doing and how can they help us and we help them. For example, all going through these municipal agreements, other towns have done those.
Right.
And so they gave us some of their expertise.
So you can learn from them and they can learn from some of our things that we do.
Exactly. And then MCAN not only brings us together, but they also stay very much up to date on all the legislation at the state level and can talk to us about how we lobby for different bills and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, in terms of electrification, some of my friends have solar panels on their roofs, and one person says, "Gee, we don't pay anything. We go the whole year, and basically it nets out." And how that works is, of course, you have lots of solar in the daytime and more in the summer, and at night you still get power from the grid. And during the daytime, excess power flows back to the grid, and we have a thing called net metering, so it's kind of it evens out through the year.
Yes, exactly.
And that would be a great thing if you were running, a lot of these different heat pumps and other things like that.
Yes, for folks who have good exposure, so they don't have a lot of trees, it's definitely not worth taking down a forest to put up your solar panels.
No, don't want to do that.
If you happen to be facing south or southwest, southeast, and you have a good roof, and you can get someone to come and check out, is it appropriate for solar? Then you can be getting 40, 60, 80% of your electricity from solar. I know people who are getting, like you say, well over 100%.
Right.
So they actually not only get all their electricity from their solar panels, they're getting a check back from National Grid.
Yes.
Which is really nice.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, I understand one of the Andover schools has just gotten a grant to have solar on their roof, so that will be exciting to see how that happens.
Yes, it's thrilling. Sanborn.
Sanborn.
We, here in Andover, one of the things WeCan did early on was advocate for a position in town, a sustainability coordinator. And that came to be And we've hired an amazing sustainability coordinator, Joyce Losick-Yang.
We've had her on this show already.
Fantastic. And she has been instrumental in getting all sorts of grants for Andover. And so this big one that you referred to is actually from the Merrimack Valley Renewal Fund. So gas explosions.
Oh,
Whoa,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, it came from that.
It came from that. So
Okay.
that money that was set aside with the Attorney General agreement,
Right.
she applied for that. And so that is what's going to do the design and the development and the installation of solar panels on Sanborn, which is really super exciting.
That is, and if that works well, one would hope they could expand that. We got a lot of roofs on municipal buildings in town.
Exactly.
So that could really
Municip-
help us.
Yes, municipal buildings, businesses, shopping plazas, roofs are great places for solar. Most of those places have a lot of clearance around them, so you don't get much shade.
Yep.
And while there are some things on roofs, they're structurally very strong, and they're not in the way of anything else. So let's put more solar panels on roofs.
And you mentioned we shouldn't be chopping down forests for big solar farms. There was an article in the Globe recently about that, saying, that's just not a good thing because the trees provide so many other benefits in terms of carbon sink and
Exactly.
sources of oxygen during the growing season and so forth. So,
And not only that, we don't need to do that because if you just look at all the roofs around,
fill up the roofs.
fill the roofs first,
Yeah.
and then we can see what else is needed.
Right.
I
Now,
believe.
there's a solar canopy off of Chandler Road, which is over the parking lot. And so
Okay.
people get cool cars in the hot summer days, and those panels collect the solar heat.
Yes, canopies of parking lots are used in multiple places across the country. And you're right, they're cooling for people who are parking, also keeps the rain off you.
And even the snow on a snowy
And
day, I
even the
suppose, or
snow.
sleet.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of benefits there as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So talking further about electrifying, how about driving? Electric cars, I just read recently the sales of these is starting to pick up quite a bit. I think it's almost doubled in the last, let's say, year and a half.
Yes, I feel like we're reaching a tipping point where people are seeing a lot of electric cars and becoming more comfortable with switching from going to a gas station to charging their car. And so more people are going, okay, I can give that a try. And there are a lot of waiting lists to get electric cars.
Right.
It's not like you can just go to the lot and drive one away. There are a huge number of advantages to electric cars, in addition to not having any carbon emissions while they're driving. They accelerate a lot faster. So when you're coming into traffic and you have to merge quickly into a lot of traffic, it's a lot more comfortable to do that.
Right.
You want to stay warm in your car or cool in your car while you're waiting for your child in the pickup lane, and those cars are not supposed to be idling while they're waiting at schools. You can have your heat on. Your car isn't idling. You're not emitting any emissions.
Right.
You don't have to worry about turning on your car ahead of time in the garage when you want to warm it up because
There's no warm up.
Exactly.
No,
And there's no emissions. Even if you just want to warm it up in advance, you can.
Right.
So a lot of advantages in addition to not emitting carbon while it goes.
And you don't have to go for the oil change every 6,000 miles or whatever. And those are expensive these days.
Exactly. Not just the oil change. There's a lot fewer moving parts.
Right.
And because there's fewer moving parts, there's less maintenance.
Less to break down, less to maintain. Right.
Exactly.
And that's true. That's what people are finding.
Yep. And I know people get concerned about distance and being able to have enough energy to drive where they're headed. Most cars on the market today can go no problem from Andover to Boston and back on your commute. And if you need to go further, the charging networks, they're coming along. There will still be some time for people to get used to that. It's not just like pulling into a gas station. It does take longer to charge than it does to fill up your car. But quite honestly, it's nice to charge, maybe take a walk around when you're on a long drive.
Right.
I certainly appreciate that.
I mean, I've heard some of the charging, you can do quite a bit in half an hour if it's one of the high-speed big chargers.
Yep, the high-speed chargers, around half an hour. Most people, well over 90% of their charging will be done at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we'll see a real paradigm shift. Instead of having a gas station on every corner, Most of the charging will be done at home, and we'll just see charging along highways and
Right.
long corridors like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a big issue we do need to resolve is for anyone who doesn't have dedicated parking. Where are they going to charge?
Right.
So if you're
a lot of apartment folks
Lot of
don't
farm-
have
Yep.
good situations. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's something we're going to need to figure out.
Yep.
What are we going to do about those folks? And that's part of the equity that
Yeah.
comes with thinking about, as we electrify, making sure everyone is participating. And it's something we need to think about locally as well as statewide.
Right,
How
right.
that's going to happen.
That's true. A lot of businesses have, where I used to work, we had charging spaces for people with EVs.
Yes, and that's certainly one solution.
Yep.
You charge at work instead of at home.
Yep.
Because as long as you're charging one or the other, you're going to be covered. Homeowner associations can put them in a condo complex. So there are ways to think about it. We just need to be proactive and make sure we're planning for that future.
Is there a concern that we have enough of an electrical infrastructure? If we have our houses all running on electricity plus charging EVs, we're going to have to be running more transmission lines, beefing up the infrastructure in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, so infrastructure is important. I'm sure everyone's heard about the electric grid and the issues it has, and it does have huge issues, and there's a lot of people working on that. There are some benefits to changing over some of these machines. So for instance, our air conditioning. Right now in New England, we're hitting our peaks in the summer when
Yes.
we're air conditioning our homes.
Right.
If we're swapping out some of the more older, inefficient air conditioners for more efficient heat pumps, which also cool and act as air conditioners.
And they're actually pretty efficient, I think,
There's-
compared to ones that are maybe 10 or 15 years old.
Exactly, super efficient. So that reduces the load.
Right.
So that's a positive thing on the grid. That said, yes, we are going to have to figure out how to make sure that we keep the electricity we need and electricity that's being generated in sync. More solar on roofs
Yes.
would be one example of how we do that.
That's true.
Yep.
And if you're charging your EV at night, night is the cheapest electricity in terms of the generation and so forth. So that's a benefit, I think, to everybody.
Huge benefit, and right now National Grid has a rebate. So if you have an electric vehicle and you sign up to charge off peak hours, which you can set up with an app, you get 3 cents a kilowatt hour reduction rebate during the winter and 5 cents during the summer.
Oh,
So,
that's a good deal.
money
I
back,
didn't
too.
know about that
Yeah,
one.
so if
I
you
like
have-
money back.
Yes. So if you have an electric vehicle,
Yeah.
by all means, make sure you check that out with National Grid. There's a lot more to learn about electrification. We have a website, andoverwecan.org, which talks about all these things and a whole lot more. So you can always go there.
Good.
to
What
find
about
out more.
sustainability? Is that also an area that you guys are looking into?
100%. So another big element of what we're doing is called a sustainability resolution. And this is a resolution that Andover We Can is bringing forward to the next spring town meeting. And it is a way to let our town leaders know that sustainability is important to us. And we want the town thinking about what they can do to promote electrification, to ensure everyone gets to participate so it's equitable, to think about reducing greenhouse gases, not only at town buildings, which Joyce has done a ton thinking about that, along with other folks in town, but also working with residents, working with businesses on what are the systems and structural changes that can be changed, or what can residents do to help lower their emissions. So it's a set of actions that we're asking the town to take. It's non-binding, and there's no financial strings attached. It's a way to show not only that Andover residents, this is an important value in living here in Andover, it also aligns us with the state goals, because as I'm sure you know, the Baker administration has set some really aggressive
goals.
targets in reducing greenhouse gas emissions to get below 1990 levels 50% down by 2030, which is not that far away, and get to net zero, meaning net no greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And so as part of the Commonwealth, we need to be doing our part. Every single town is going to need to do something. It's not something that can happen just at the state.
No.
And so this sustainability resolution helps us align with that goal.
Well, it's interesting. You look back into the United States history, and in about the 1870s, everybody had wood stoves. And they were all burning wood for heat and for cooking and so forth. In about 10 years, that all flipped over to coal, the new guy on the block. And everybody ran out and they junked their old stoves, got coal stoves and coal furnaces. And I think, back then things didn't move as fast. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have the kind of communication. Nevertheless, it just amazes me that they made that big a change in basically a decade or decade and a half.
Yeah, that is a super point, Fred. We have been changing all throughout history in the different kinds of energy we use because we moved on from coal.
Yes.
And we moved on from coal to natural gas and nuclear, and we have this opportunity now to switch to electric and clean electric, renewable electric, large hydro, wind power, solar power, and so forth.
Yeah, and then the other wrinkle that's real interesting is storage. If we can come up with batteries that we can either have at the utility level or even better yet at the house level. Tesla has some that you can mount on the wall, and they help some, but you need to go like 10 times bigger than that.
Yes, I'm so excited by all of the research that is being done across the board in this area. And batteries is huge because, as you said earlier, sure, the sun is shining all day, but what do we do at night?
Right.
And wind power can be 24 hours a day, but not necessarily
not
every
always,
day. Right?
Not always.
So how can we be storing all that? And that's a big issue, and there are a lot of people working on it. So I think while we as individuals are working on electrifying our homes and our cars, I'm really excited that there's a lot of engineers and other folks out there working on the next technologies that's going to make this switch possible.
Yep, true enough. And there's a lot of people working on different battery chemistry than, one of the problems, as you're well aware of, the supplies of a lot of the rare earth minerals that go into batteries come from foreign countries, and they're not necessarily guaranteed. And so if we can come up with either better ways of processing that or different materials, this would be a winner.
Completely agree. I read an article, I know this is far off still, but someone working on sand as a possibility for a battery. So there could be all sorts of technologies out there that are being worked on right now.
Right. Very interesting. Well, how do people want to learn more? I think you'd mentioned a website, and we'll display that on the screen for folks.
Sure. So our website is andoverwecan.org. And you'll see all this, as I was saying, and a lot more. So it talks about electrification. It talks about the sustainability resolution. It talks about Andover Community Power, which is a more renewable option that we're hoping to have available hopefully next year. In addition, we have a newsletter that we send out monthly. You can sign up for the newsletter right on our website. And if you want to be more active, actually participate in our monthly meetings, we welcome that as well. So you can just email to andoverwecan@gmail.com and let us know. And we are always interested in having more people who want to educate others on what we each can do to take climate action.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a fantastic organization. Thank you so much for sharing this information with our viewers.
You are so welcome, Fred. I'm glad I could join you today.
Good.